Hello and welcome to another edition of Contact with the Beyond, Paratalk. I'm your host Markus Verneutzer and our special guest is Professor Jefferson de Souza. Hello, Professor.
Hello, greetings from Brazil.
Professor Jefferson says he knows how it feels like to go through a stargate. Professor Jefferson, could you explain our audience what happened to you when you were 7 years old?
My experience is something so remarkable. Even when decades came from this happened, I'm 63 years old now. This happened at the age of 7. It feels so ingrained in my memory. Such details, I don't think they ever can go away. The memory seems so present, so rooted inside my very self. I just can't forget. There was a night, and it was a summer night. I would say about between 2 and 3 in the morning. I wasn't exactly sure for the time. I knew it was between this time precisely. I was sleeping in my room and I had no idea what exactly woke me up. Call it a sensation, a feeling. It was like something was happening and I don't have words exactly to explain the circumstances, but I noticed the wall in my room exactly was in front of me, which goes to the other side of that wall is the street. We're talking here about the city of Porto Alegre in the state of Rio Grande do Sul in the south of Brazil. So it was like not exactly glowing, it was like a reflection of light, but coming from nowhere. There was extremely strange, all that. And then was this like a shimmering or something, like that effect you have when you go to to the road and it's a very hot day and you look the horizon and it looks like something is moving. The same way the wall starts to look like, and
like a waving pattern, like in a
exactly
waving
like a waving pattern. And I noticed it became somehow transparent, not exactly transparent, but you could see like patterns which resemble what would be the street if I had a window in that wall, which I didn't. The window was the opposite wall. So only that would be enough to make any child to start to scream bloody murder to the parents and run from there. But I didn't feel fear. I felt curiosity, but most of the curiosity, a sense of relaxing. And that wasn't a normal circumstance, was not an average reaction, was something else. And then the wall starts actually to glow in that area and expanded and opened, like an opening was forming, an opening made of light. I noticed one thing: the temperature around the room start to drop a little bit, and you have something like the scent when after rain and you smell like ozone. That was start to first very faint, and then it starts to become more remarking. So like it was increasing, And finally, all that light seems to be moving through inside. Like, imagine if you put a hole in the ground and you see all the sand slippery inside the hole. There was the same reason the light was going into the wall. It was something, it's so hard to find the correct words for that, because first I I didn't have anything to compare with. I never seen nothing like that before. So everything was new to me. And I surprised myself by the fact of I felt good. I didn't felt scared. I didn't felt, you know, any any other stress from me. Suddenly the wall wasn't a wall anymore. It was like a doorway which was not a doorway. It was like a space opening in the wall and was lighting coming from outside. Please, you have a question?
What did you see on the other side? Did you still see what was in real on the other side of the wall, or was it like a tunnel into a different dimension?
Was marked like a tunnel was like a tunnel kind of situation, because you didn't see exactly, but you see light coming from outside, and was nighttime on my time, and this looks like daylight, because you notice when light comes from a lamp, when it's daylight, is a very distinctive kind of brightness. So that even enhanced my curiosity even more. I remember I was not laying down anymore. I just sit up on a bed, and took the cover, because I was covered just with the sheet. Was no need for a blanket, because, as I said, was a summer. So I sit on a bed and keep looking to that, and I wanted to touch it. I want to touch that thing. I want to touch there. I don't even realize I was standing up, because I remember, clearly I was sitting down. I didn't remember me to wake up. When I get on my senses again, I was already stood, you know, and then I see the silhouettes like shadows. It was three people. I imagine people because of the shapes, you know. They are, for me, they're tall because I was a child, you know. I would say right now they're going to be like an average once 1 meter 60, about that, in height. So they're not very tall, but to me, which was a child, yes, they were. I couldn't see them because the light coming from outside looks like, uh, I couldn't understand what I was seeing. I seen these three shapes coming, and they coming walking through that, and suddenly behind them the light start to readjust, and they like entering focus. I don't know how to say. Imagine if they're out of focus and suddenly they get focused and you can see
Yeah,
details.
they are first blurred. You can't see
Exactly, you couldn't see. You see
how
just a
they look
blur.
like.
You see the shapes, but you couldn't see the details. And suddenly, there was not it was not something which happened bit by bit. It just happened. Like they crossed. When they crossed, I could see them. I could see their people. You know, they have like they are three males. Three men. Like I would say, the ages. For me, they're gonna be in their 20s, mid 20s to late 20s, and
So they were looking like human beings.
that look like exactly like human beings. And the interesting thing I noticed about there was the eyes, because they have very gentle eyes, extremely gentle. They have a gaze which is a strong gaze, but was not menacing at all. You feel even better, safer, because imagine the situation: you are a kid, 7-year-old kid, and you see suddenly that thing happening in the wall. Then three men just come through the wall, knowing of this is beyond bizarre. I would anybody's reaction gonna be scream as crazy, and do something to run, to escape. But I didn't felt nothing at all like that. I felt peace. I felt relaxing, but I felt extreme curiosity more than anything else. They approached, and they could see through the light which was coming, because the room was dark, was nighttime. But the light between them, you could observe details. They were wearing some sort of a jumpsuit, which was silvery, not exactly silver, silverish. I don't know how to. It's like the light of the clothing looks like change. Sometimes there was a mixing of a
Reflection.
blue and silver, and then becomes silver, and then blue and silver again. Looks like it's moving without move. It was just like a reflection of light coming through the clothing. That was extremely strong. Oh, one thing, when they passed through, was a sound. Was was not exactly like a pop, but there was something similar to that. And you see the air moving. You felt a movement in the air. You felt like it was like air coming through, like a stream of air, like breeze. But they have to cross it first. In the beginning, they didn't say at the beginning. You just have the scent of ozone. You have the different temperature, because I didn't have air conditioning in the room, but you clearly could see of the room was getting colder, you know. But when they cross it, that colder sensation start to vanish, not suddenly, but start to vanish gradually, and like they bring warmth with them, like when they cross it, you know. They resemble people from India, like a darkish skin, black hair, and the eyes are so strange, but they're, I would say, beautiful. They were clear eyes. They were not blue or green or anything like that. They was like amber eyes. And they approached. The way they walk was strange, because they walk erect, but they have a grace in the way they walk. They don't walk like regular people. They walk with a grace in their walking, which I didn't see no one walking like that, because it was a kind of walk which I would say regal, but I say, I don't know if this is the right term, because looks like you could
Not
see
directly like a human being, more like a toy.
no, was like, imagine imagine like a protocol of a very etiquette or something, like the way you move gracefully. You
Okay.
displace yourself very gracefully. That was exactly the term I'm trying to find. I have to apologize, but it's certain. It's hard to describe certain things, because it was a situation I never had nothing to compare with before. You know, so I'm trying to grasp as the mind of a 7, and now as an adult, and even now as an adult, I don't have the right words to describe what I saw, because how I would say you walk gracefully, like you feel a majesty in the way they walk. like
Mhm.
they're erect, you know, at the same time they inspire you respect. Not doing nothing, not saying nothing, no movement. It's just inspiration of them being there, you know. The way they move the arms when they walk, you know, at the side of the body was the only way to describe is a grace in the way they walk. It's no other way to say it. So the approach, and the one which was in the front, he communicated with me. But that is a strange thing. He didn't use words. Was no words involved. It was like telepathy, like you see somebody talking with your mind or you hear a voice. No, was no voice involved. Somehow I was connected to him. I knew what he knew. I felt what he felt. And for a moment in the process of this was starting, that really started me for a second. The fact of I was looking at him, and suddenly I was looking at myself on the standing at the side of the bed, and I said, "What?" It's like I see myself through his eyes. That was so bizarre. It's the only way, the only word probably would define that moment of confusion, but extremely exhilaration. The fact that I couldn't see I could see myself, and I seeing myself, I was not looking the way I thought I was always did, because I was looking to me in three dimensions. When I was used to see only as a reflection of something in the mirror or whatever, but suddenly I was there looking at me in three dimensions, and I didn't look like me, but I knew it was me, and that was so surprising, and suddenly returned and everything in the right perspective. So I
One
understand.
question.
Yes.
When you looked through the eyes of this being,
Mhm.
it was exactly the same to see the environment like you do it with your human eyes, or
No, no.
it was different?
Was different because one thing, I didn't see only an image. I see I had some sort of light surrounding my body. I could see different patterns and shapes and light surrounding the room, which normally I never noticed before or even realized they had it there. I didn't even understood why I was seeing that, you know, but was was like seeing me enhanced. I don't know how to explain how to say that, but I was not just seeing an image. I see an image and I see information would be that word. Information in the image I was seeing, because I attribute what I was seeing around me could be my aura, my biofield or something, and the other energies I was seeing in the room probably as sources of like residual energy or external energy or something like that. That just in that moment, as a kid, now as an adult, I start to rationalize what I saw. But that moment, as a kid, I just took it inside. Took me years later on to grasp that moment, to understand. And even now, to 63, I still didn't have every single element to be, told correctly. I'm just giving the reasoning I could master. Because remember, that's a kind of situation. Because when you know something, you need to compare with something else to make a correlation. This way you can understand the fact. But I never had nothing like that happen at all.
It's quite difficult, definitely.
So the other two never actually interacted, but I also was connected to them, but was not as strongly as the one which was the front, which I assume was the leader, if they have a leader, because they don't have, their society is different. They did not had ranks. It's like everybody knew their own place, their own activity. Everybody was important. If a person was, which was the function to make sure of everything is clean or something, not by itself, but using for several devices or ways they have it, was as important as a one who is making stellar cartography, was the same sort of importance because everybody has a function and every function was the one who sums to the whole of the society. So I would say they are a collective mind. Everybody knew exactly what the other was thinking or feeling, which made them imagine how gets individuality on that. What gets your sense of self when you do not are exactly a self because you're always part of a bigger picture. But that's the considerations I made as an adult, not as a kid. You know, it's kind of hard to
Obviously.
disassociate one from another. But continue the thing. The one who was approaching, he made me understand without using words, which I had the choice to follow them to the opening in the wall or not. They just made sure of a choice I had to make because they would not take me against my will. So I would be very comfortable with that. And he said, in the case I decide to follow them, we further will continue to meet under different circumstances, but going to be a continuation on the process. Or if I chose not to go with them for my own safekeeping, I would forget all the event at all. I'm gonna have no memory at all what happened. But I decided if I want to see what was on the other side. So I agreed to go with them. Imagine a 7 years old child going with three strangers who just came from the wall. More bizarre than that, I cannot imagine. But
Yes.
but there was the circumstances, was a personal choice. I was not influenced by any other things. There was my own choice.
Are you sh- are you sure there was no influence? Because you didn't feel fear. You weren't worried about the situation. You
What
felt peace and good.
what I was told later on as further contacts happened is the only influence I got from them was the fact to be relaxed and have an opportunity for them to actually express themselves. Is the only thing they did. Because according to their society, imposing the will against another will, there was be a break in a protocol on their very essence of believing. The way the things their society does, the way they proceed, they are strong believers of free will. You have to have choices. Every one of them choose to make the things they do because they are agreeable with that. So they want to see if I was agreeing with that. So the only thing they did is they calmed myself. But if they went to really want to take me to the side, they could easily force me to go. Not physically. They could simply implant some need to follow them and no questions. But in the very beginning, they present themselves with the option of following them or forgetting them. But the choice would be mine. They would not force that upon me.
And now you agreed to it, to go with them, to
Yes.
experience
Because
what.
there was what a part of me who probably was play a bigger role on that is I was a very unusual child. I'm a very curious person by nature. And my curiosity was not just a mere curiosity, was a need to understand things. Since I remember myself, since I got my senses, I looked to a TV and not just see a TV. I wanted to understand how I was seeing what I was seeing. It doesn't make no sense, but that was me since I was little, and a lot of things. I remember the need to learn how to read and write because I see the symbols, I see the pictures, and I knew they have the meaning, and I knew I need to understand what is the proper way to grasp the understanding of that symbols. So that was the way I see the need of reading. I learned how to read based on that premises. Not because somebody told me to read, because I need to be told. No, I sought myself because I want to understand what that symbols means and how they will influence my life in consequence of that. So is a very unusual child. No child operate on these parameters, but probably they're one of the reasons I was chosen. Later on, I find out of wasn't just me. It was not a random choice. They came to me because it was a continuity of a process which happened along my family. Something had to do with my great grandparents. So I'm a descendant of someone they already been working with a long time ago. So it was something extremely remarkable. It was a work like continuation of a work, a genealogical timeline which happens in the past with my ancestors and continuing on me in and that really made me think. But not at the age of 7, I don't even understood these things. This happens in the, as the further contacts happen and they explain things to me. So first, what was the reason they were there? They didn't came to my room just to bring me to another side. Are we going to go what they saw on the other side? They're going to go in details, mother, just to understand this. Why they wouldn't do that? Because resources are needed to produce that effect. The way they do is they bend time and space. Bending time and space, they do what we could define as a quantum singularity. And the fact from the quantum singularity is a displacement, which people which are in the physics would explain as a wormhole. The better way to explain what they did. So, remember, to make a wormhole, an artificial wormhole, a stable wormhole, they need a source of energy which is extremely strong for that to be done. It's not something to do with a
Question here.
battery.
Is a wormhole this what we understand in general under a stargate? Or would you define a wormhole and stargate, would you say that's something very different?
Something very different, that one thing. Because that specific wormhole was to take organic life forms. Is made precisely, to withstand a lot of things, atmosphere, radiations, unusual radiations. A lot of things have to be considered. We don't have a protection of a spaceship or any other thing. We would protect it from the outside. So the circumstances of that specific wormhole was not the regular wormhole as you imagine, because the other one requires a even greater source of energy, which later on they explain they take from neutron stars. Neutron stars are the only ones who can actually provide that kind of energy they need to open a wormhole large enough for a vessel to cross interstellar space, because it's talking about time and space, and this a distortion on these things. I learned so many things with them: the nature of time, the nature, true nature of space, what is matter, and how matter has to do with the existence which they have in this reality or this realm, like they used to tell us, you know. And I understood of we are in a universe which is part of a multiverse, which also is part of an omniverse. And the omniverse has uh, realms which has nothing to do with we understand in terms of time and space. The very laws of physics, if you can actually use the word laws of physics, because what the thing they explained to me is what we call laws of physics, or these elements like gravity, like photons, like nuclear forces, um, all these things, electromagnetic fields, all them depend of the region of space you would be.
And time.
Because exactly, because going to be variations depending which place you are. You're going to have distortions, enhancement, decreasing, or actually totally different functions, like you can even can describe, because you have nothing to compare with to understand the facts, you know. For example, like they said, is places you go on space which you duplicate yourself and you coexist in two or more places at the same time, but it's still
What
you.
in real is as well on the other side, when we
Exactly.
speak about the afterlife, exactly the same. When you were explaining that basically it doesn't exist something what is not true, all as well fantasy or things we imagine there are true in other dimensions. So here we could say basically what we call imagination is maybe that we see in other dimension and we interpret situations completely wrong sometimes.
Absolutely. And the reason is every time you try to interpret the phenomena, we have to use elements which can correlate with. But how are we going to correlate with something which not exists in our reality? We
Exactly.
have nothing
And
to
this is the
compare with.
problem what you have
Mhm.
if you explain people what you experienced as a child, something what we don't have usually around us, and now you have to find an explanation. You come through it very near, but in real, you are not able to describe exactly what you saw.
Because we don't have no means to compare. If I don't have
Yeah.
elements to compare, I cannot give to you the understanding of the experience, because
Mhm.
I'm going to give you elements which they not fully fulfill the reality I experienced. I
Mhm.
try to find um, between the things we know the best way to explain to you. But how to explain something is like how you tell a person a color which you never saw before,
It's
a
not
color who
possible.
actually goes or beyond or below the spectrum of light which we know. So if this happens, you have no means to explain. This is because I understand my flaws here, trying to pass through you my experience. Because I'm always going to be limited to the things I can correlate with, and this way to transmit to you or try to transmit to you what I passed through. But I never will be able to give you the real experience because I don't have elements to compare with.
It's
And this way,
completely clear.
exactly.
Completely clear. Professor Jefferson, let us get a little bit further because we are starting to running out of time.
Mhm.
You went with these beings through the wormhole
Yes.
stargate.
Yeah.
What did you feel? What was happening on the way through it?
Let me go to parts on this. When we approach to there, at the closest you get to the wall, you have this feeling of static electricity going through your body. Starts, you don't know if it starts in your head going to your toes, or start your toes going to your head, but it's the feeling of like something's pulsing, like this. This is the feeling you have inside you. Variations of heat and cold, like everything changes in the moment. And the moment you cross, the moment if you touch that bubble membrane or whatever you want to call it, you know, because it's a substance which is not a substance. See, that's another way to try to describe something which is undescribable. I don't have the terms to pass through you what I felt. There was a substance, was not a substance, was and wasn't, or something else which I have no comparison with. But when you cross it, when you touch that, you have that feeling of ignition. I don't know if this is the even right term, but you feel something through your entire body. The scent you have gets increasingly a thousandfold, but not a point to gag you. But you notice the increasing part. Your vision uh, blurs and spans and contracts and gets dark and that's bright, and it's all happened at the same time. You feel you are moving without move, because I was walking through that opening, but when I crossed into the opening, I was not walking anymore, but I was displacing without actually walking. And it was a moment which for me don't look like a moment. It looks like was much more than just a second or just an opening of eyes. Looks like a time which I don't even can calculate at the same time was just a moment. It's got so hard to explain that. But when I crossed into the other side, it was daylight, and I was in a place which was just different from anything I ever seen before. The beings are at my side, and they always move in a way. Look, I didn't feel crowded. I didn't feel pressed. I just feel I have their company, and that was the thing. They never actually, like drove me to walk through. They just passed with me. And when I got there, I was bare feet, because I didn't put my sandals or anything. So I felt my feet on that ground. Whatever was some sort of grass, but not like grass I ever felt before. It was a velvet, which was not wet, but as humid. But there was a sensation of like it's so strange, that sensation of walking on that. It's nothing here can compare to the walking. And the coloration I see around me, they have purples, then you have brownish and lilac, all simultaneously. The trees I recognize as trees, but they don't look like trees or no trees you ever imagine. Imagine of the roots of the tree. They're not on the ground, but they are around the tree. Make no sense, but that was the only way I can describe that. There was no leaves, not as we see in the trees. There was these roundish things, you know. Imagine a plastic who looks like a jelly, which was not neither of them. There was the kind of things I see. I see things of like could be bushes, you know, but the most interesting and remarkable was the landscape because you could see for miles, I would say, and you see the hills and everything, but the shape of the hills was remarkable because they have shapes like nothing I can describe. They look artificial, but they're also natural, a blend of both, which
Did you
makes no
see
sense
something
in
what you
nature.
could compare with cars, transport, streets? Did something like that comparable exist?
So hard to actually make something I ever seen who looks like that. I could make drawings of that, but any drawing I'm gonna make, I'm not gonna be exactly a true rendition of what I saw, because the shapes of the things, the shapes I have to understand. Because one time looks like they're squares, looks like something which was made artificially, gonna blend in something which clear was natural, and they just blend into each other. It's not a contrast, which
Do
gonna
you
say one
believe
was contrasting to other.
do you believe this was a world in our universe, or was it a completely different universe?
According to them, according to them, I was in our universe, but I was in a different quadrant. According to them, I was still in what they call the local group of galaxies. But by some reason, you know, uh, I was settled in the Milky Way galaxy, and the source of reference they have for me was this star who has like a ring around the star.
So,
It was a very bright star. Was looks closer than our sun. The coloration was not as our sun. Was like a orange kind of thing. Felt very unusual. The air was breathing. They told me of that air was placed there for my sake. Said that kind of atmosphere was some sort of what they call bubble of a containment field or whatever you want to call it for my own sake. And they even adjust the gravity for my displacement because it said the variations of gravity will affect my way to move.
so
And I was told
you could think when you hear this, normally they would maybe hover over the earth or the ground, or it could be that the gravitation in this place was so strong that it would have been too strong for you.
probably was something like that because they told me other thing too. Uh, he said of the air was being recycled and prepared for my species, and even the gravity fields were prepared because I was a child. So imagine my limitation was to be much, much more limited than an adult to move. You know. Later on, they explained to me when we cross it to that they have a safe keeping device which had a purpose. any bacteria or any sort of foreign substances which are within my body even without my knowledge would be refrained by a filter. This way we do not cross with us in that environment. They said of the same thing happens to them when they cross into mine. There was the way to preserve, our physical integrity, because he said the quantity of carrying germs and other things with you without realizing, you know. And there was a reason when you move to these gateways is a natural filtering process to make sure you not they don't want to alterate my environment and they don't want me to alterate their environment. So there was a
Makes
both
completely
ways
sense.
kind of thing, you know. There was I thought that was remarkable in itself, you know. But they didn't explain this at the age of 7. They just later on I got that knowledge. They were very precise. They wanted to see that place because they said the importance of I being what they call activated, whatever that means. Because they said it was important I physically to be there for the process to be effective. They didn't have no portable devices who could produce the effect that they expected. They needed me to be in person in that specific location because they said that would create the effect of they expected. An effect would not going to happen right away, but an effect that would be gradually becoming part of me. So there was the call, the seedling. The seedling is I don't know if being impregnated or implanted or whatever you're gonna call it because it was not a physical device. There was a source of energy. They explained to me a lot of things. They told me about devices which are not physical. They're ethereal devices. Devices who actually are akin to what you use here in electronic form, but they are not solid, they are not physical. Their etherical part of thing. So they said of their technologies don't are restrained by the need of physicality. Don't need to be physical. They just need to control the right frequencies and harmonics, and a lot of effects could be produced. Basically, was that. So the reason they went through all this process to bring me to the side was to have that seedling, what they call it, which during the years transforming somehow, accurate my senses, uh, my my five senses, they didn't matter anymore. All the senses that I didn't even knew I had are being awakened, and that was the reason I was there. I was there to just observe things. I was not there just by curiosity, and they didn't choose me randomly. I was part of a process. And the moment I did that, they told me of as the time what went by, I would understand better. And the only reason they did that is because I agreed with that. I agreed with this. My perception as a kid changed in that activation. How? I tell you, even as 7 year old, when I returned it when you're going to explain the process of returning was a little bit different from the arriving, you know. Uh, when I return later on, if I see a leaf, a person just see a leaf. Okay, interesting, just a leaf on a tree, you know. But I know I see that thing as some sort of a bionuclear reactor capable to photosynthesis chlorophyll, to change, carbonic gas into oxygen. So That was the kind of thoughts I had. A 7-year-old don't have thoughts like that, or even think or
No.
have the understanding of that. But suddenly that understanding came to me, and I start to knew things without having access to prior knowledge. Just flows inside you, and even nowadays make me capable to access a lot of areas of I shouldn't know, but became part of me, like I studied that my entire life. And that really, and not only that, I didn't get the information from other people. My access information is a brand new information adding to the other people think, and sometimes even going totally differently from the ideas of people have about gravity, about time and space. For example, I learned time is not a measurement. Time is not a subjective thing. Time is a form of energy which can be manipulated. So this said, the better way to describe the nature of time is to talk about a metaparticle, a wave particle to be precise, which a better definition for that basically in the human semantics gonna be a chronotron, a wave metaparticle of time, which is the base of the things which produce the fractals, and the fractals will end up produce Higgs boson and other basic elements which are building block of everything we know as matter and energy, and even the essence of time and space.
Basically, all the matter what we see is frozen time.
Basically,
As well, time can be frozen matter.
and what I think about the simultaneously of time, we time is not a line, is not a straight line. Time happens by more like ellipses. We are living the future of a past. In reality, we are living a past of a future, being a present which cannot even be calculated. Because in order to calculate the present time, you have to tell what is the highest natural number which exists, or the lowest, which is impossible, is an decimal number. So you cannot have an algorithm who calculate present time. So time present becomes ephemeral. Past is mutable as the future. Because we being a future of a past.
Professor, we are running out of time. Let us jump little bit further.
Okay, that means just returning back to that and returning to my room. When all these informations were given, because we have to do these explanations in the process, like it's not enough time for you to explain everything I learned with them, but this was just a beginning, like a point of launching this knowledge to you. The returning was different. They told us in the order to return, a part of me must remain there. And I tried to understand what they mean by that. And they said, your soul coexists in different places and different times. So what you call as reality, in reality is not a true reality. It's a fragmentation of a whole, which the experiences you've been having as present is still happening in the past and will happen in possible futures based in the choices you make your free will.
Every decision has a consequence, and this means a
Exactly.
timeline.
And the consequence is going to create a new alternative timeline. That was because it's not a future, but futures based And everything you do don't affect only you, gonna affect everything, because everything is connected. What happens here on Earth gonna happen in the other side of the universe somehow, because everything is literally part of the same existence, which transcends a reality of we think we know and understand. Our concept of reality is much more complex than that. They told me the true secret of the universe is the complexity of the simplicity and the simplicity of the complexity.
Some
Because
people, they start to think now and they will never understand what is the meaning. Maybe I can break it down in a specific, very simple way. What I understand under it when I hear it, I come every time to the basic that we are a spark of God, where we learn where we learn to manipulate energy and to create. When we understand that we create all this what exists and we manipulate it and have the chance to develop a hell or a heaven, then it needs time to be aware of it, to learn that we are gods, we have the spark of God, and that we have as well the opportunity to create all what we need, what is desirable, and what maybe can destroy us. This would be, for me, the simplicity, what all includes the knowledge of the universe, how complicated it is, but with our own mind and soul, what is very simple in context, we can manipulate it in a good way.
of course, but they just
What
want
do
to
you
make
think about it?
an adding here. They told me of their civilization is called Chahamayat. The best way to verbalize that. And they said one thing about their civilization. They did not rely on technology. They rely on the control of energy. They said instead of using constructs, physical constructs, manipulating energy, they can do everything they need to be done without the need to the physical. So I asked them, is that your true form? And he said, no, this was created for the benefit of your understanding and trust. Because you do not will understand our true form, because our true form is beyond the physical, but it's also beyond the ethereal. So I explain what that means, and means that's a realm called, the best way to say it in your semantics could be the divine. And in the divine, you understand of the limitations of the matter make you depending of technologies which are physical, when your true potential relies in the control of energies, because you're essentially part of a highest creation. You being creation, you also sparkle from the creator. Pretty much that's what they try to pass through me. So they said that's the moment of you looking for extraterrestrial beings with spaceships and cities and all these things are irrelevant. But this, and ask them later, but if you are made of energy and these things, why caring about microbes or microorganisms or things of sort? And he said, the caring was not for us, the caring was for you. That was the reason they created the things, not because they need to preserve themselves, but they want to preserve me and others, or the humans as
Mhm.
me,
Mhm.
because they are beyond these things. They are beyond germs and bacteria and things like that, but I'm not. I still our organic life form.
Professor Jefferson, we we came to the end of the time we had
Mhm.
for this interview. It is not the last time that we have an interview together about different topics, and we come for sure back to this topic where we go a little bit deeper into it.
Absolutely.
Professor Jefferson, you are as well an author. Could you mention the name of your books you published
Okay.
until now?
Okay. Basically, was a series of books called the Blue Planet Project. Books available on the Amazon. And interesting thing about that is when I wrote these books was in a circumstance I used to be part of an asset for the U.S. Department of Defense, working what they call black budget projects. I'll work specifically to two agencies. The first agency was DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, that was in Arlington, Virginia. And the second agency was National Security Agency, which was in Fort Meade, in Maryland. I used to have a GS-8 clearance, which is not given to non-Americans. In order to have a GS-8, you need to be born American, non-naturalized, or especially being a foreigner, as I was. But in my case, it was made an exception, and I worked for three basic projects. The first one was called the Blue Planet Project, which is a project involving contactees, abductees, and hybrids. Hybrids mean people which are born with genetic upbringing
Manipulation.
from off-worlders, from people from other planets. The second project was the Pulsar project, which was about retro-engineering of several different technologies. And the third project was Nemesis, which is a project which was about the militarization of things. For example, if you have um, if you have some sort of device capable to pull things by fields of gravity and use that for transportation, you transport very heavy objects from one place to another. Militarizing them means how to use them for destruction, how you can use the same graviton fields not to carry objects, but to actually, essentially,
Weapon.
to disassemble them, break them, neutralize them. Uh, and that was basically what happened. My latest book in the United States, available right now, is called Dark Matters and Prophecy, The Secrets of the Ouija Board, which I tracked the all the way of the Ouija board was presented first in Sumeria, in the times even before the so-called Anunnaki, which transdimensional entities are the ones who actually give the elements to contact and communicate it. And even nowadays, the Ouija board is mistakenly used to contact departed people, which in reality they are contacting predators, ethereal predators who actually prey on bioenergy and the sensorial output from the strong emotions
The
that you feel.
so-called uh, attachments, negative attachments, they
Exactly.
provoke negative energy in you through fears, and they get their alimentation through it because they don't get them through the divine field. Very
Exactly.
important topic and very interesting topic, what we are going to speak about in the future as well,
Mhm.
because many people, they use this kind of board in a very wrong way, what will affect their own life, not maybe in the first second, but in a long period of time, it goes very often a very wrong way. Our next topic is going to be about Apollo 20, would officially never exist. But this is not true. This is going to be our next interview. Professor Jefferson, I'm going to paste in the description all the information people need to get a really good and interesting read on these topics you just mentioned. For today, I say thank you so much that you were here with me and telling people what you experienced in a very young age and how it influenced until today the way you think about things, what you learned, and what you can give or let as a legacy behind you for the world who is coming. But for today, I say thank you so much, and we see us the next time, and take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.